Hi, I'm Natasha Ryan with Premier Risk Solutions, and this is a video series we do weekly called Strong, Safe, and True, where we talk with security experts and we talk about topics relevant to today's climate. And this one certainly is. I have Brandon James with Seattle Police Department and Jim Fuda with Crime Stoppers on with me today. These are two of the leading experts on the subject matter we're going to take on today, which is human trafficking right here in our backyard, in our neighborhood of Seattle, Washington. And so I want to say thank you, both of you, for being on with me today.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here and talk about this important topic.
Okay, so just right out of the gate, I feel like sometimes out of sight, out of mind, people think, nah, this is, women that have fallen into bad luck. But I really want to talk about running the gamut of who's involved in being trafficked, right? Because looking at the stats and the information as a mom is just mind-blowing, makes you sick to your stomach. And, Jim, on one of your PowerPoints, we're talking about sometimes kids as young as 8. Now I know it typically skews more 12 to, 16-ish, but I really want to just drive home, and I want you both to weigh in. We'll start with you, Brandon, on how prevalent human trafficking is with children right here.
This is an ongoing issue that we're addressing, every single day. And we're receiving reports of children who are operating out in our streets, who are selling their bodies. And however they're doing it, in terms of if they're doing it on their own, but more often than not, they are being persuaded by sex traffickers to engage in this type of activity. In the past couple of weeks, we had a report from a foster parent of a 12-year-old girl who was out on Aurora, and police officers had made contact with her at the request of the foster parent. My detectives had already been in contact with her and the foster parent and other social services, and this girl continued to be out there. So this is just an ongoing problem that we're addressing on many different levels, from the individuals like this young lady and her family to the sex trafficking organizations who are recruiting young girls, oftentimes through social media, in-person contact, like at malls or other social events, and persuading them to get engaged in risky behavior, ultimately leading to having them engage in sex trafficking. And so we have a crew of detectives working alongside federal partners to address these issues in our backyard. And it is an important issue for us as we continue to investigate and identify folks who are responsible for this.
Well, as a mom and a security professional, I appreciate you. I appreciate the work you're doing. I want to say that up front. Jim, I want you to speak to the fact of how these girls, the target is maybe from a broken home, or someone who's a little depressed, or someone who needs that extra attention and is receiving it from someone out. How do you fall into this? How do they recruit them?
Well, the bottom line is that you've looked at what's happened since the pandemic. Kids are home, they're on the net, predators are home looking for people. We've got all these apps, TikTok, all the ones that are out there and these predators have their preferred app once they lure these kids away from, whether it be a Facebook or a TikTok or whatever. And I had an acquaintance of mine, parents call me less than a month ago, both of them in tears. Their 12-year-old daughter had been lured in by somebody thinking they were talking to a 14-year-old boy somewhere in California. And she had already sent, a 12-year-old girl now, had already sent this guy nude pictures. Now, I'm no expert in the internet, but I do know is that was no 14-year-old in California. When I lived overseas working for the feds in Banja Luka, Bosnia, I wanted to watch stream some TV from the States. I couldn't do it with an IP address from Bosnia. So I bought one for like $7.50 for the year that made it seem like I was in the US. So if I know how to do that, Look at the people that really know what they're doing. And my heart goes out to you ICAC guys and you people that do this, is because technology is changing so fast that our laws can't keep up with it. And these guys really have to stay sharp, because to find some of these people is mind blowing of where in the world they're coming from.
This is such a great addition to this conversation, Jim. Thank you. So Brandon, you know, I didn't even think about, not only do you have to deal with like a really unpleasant subject day in and day out, right? It takes a special kind of person to be able to handle that. But you also have to, on top of doing your job of investigating and knowing the latest lingo, now you have to be up and up on technology. I mean, what kind of addition does that make to the job, and how much harder does that make that there is what Jim's talking about, this ever evolving technology world playing a component?
You know, the technology piece is one of our ongoing challenges. Jim talked about that, is, these different apps and these apps, like we have the common 12 or 15 apps that everybody knows about, TikTok, the Snapchat, your Facebook, your Instagrams, all these apps that most parents at least have probably heard of. But the problem is not just those apps, it's the underground apps, in the other chat rooms that this is occurring on behind the scenes, that parents aren't even aware that's even out there. Other apps like Discord and other apps are just persuasive in terms of getting young adults, and oftentimes perpetrators who are posing as young adults, who are going after our children. The story that Jim talked about, that is something I'm dealing with on a daily basis as I get cyber tip complaints from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And I get, hundreds of these every single month for across the state of Washington, of just what Jim was talking about. Parents finding this kind of material on their kids' devices and reporting it, and suspecting that, the other person on the other side is not, age-like, is actually probably an adult who's enticing them, and oftentimes just through talking about gaming initially, and they'll use devices and information to find out maybe where the kid goes to school. They know what area that they live in because of the information people put online. And then so they'll say, oh, I also go to that school. I have a friend that goes to that school. And so they start befriending the kids that way. And then they gain their trust. And once they gain their trust, then they start, oh, let's share photos of us at the park, and photos of the dog, and photos of your house, and how is your gaming system set up. And that's where it starts. And then from there, it's I want to see a photo of your pretty face, and then you can just start seeing the decline or the progression of inappropriate photos being shared. We have an active case right now where elementary school children, so 5th grade and 6th grade girls, were engaged in this type of activity where they were enticed, and they shared nude photos of themselves with a perpetrator online. These are 5th and 6th grade girls that are doing this. And luckily, we had parents that were aware that this was happening amongst this friend group, and were able to stop it, but not before some of their images were shared online. And now we'll be out there forever.
And understand, once some of that trust is built, is these kids spew this stuff. They tell them about their parents. They tell them about their brothers and sisters. They, like Brandon says, about where the school, it isn't hard to figure out. And once the photos start coming and they demand more, then I'm either going to tell your parents, or I'm going to harm your sister, your this or this or whatever. So you keep them coming, and you put that kid between a rock and a hard spot, and because they're just naive.
Yeah.
So it makes it, they do it out of fear and at that point.
I just want to make sure my number is accurate, just to give some perspective here. We're talking 1 in 25 kids will be solicited online for sex at some point in their life. 1 in 25. Is that accurate? That
was a Purdue study in 2017. And my guess is that's pre-pandemic, and it's probably higher than that now.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like. Okay. So both of you weigh in on this. I don't care who goes first. How hard is it once these kids are infiltrated and in this kind of what you said, the threats start coming, once they're actually engaged in not only sharing photos, but Brandon, like out on the street, how hard is it to pull them out of this?
Well, I think it's very difficult. So it's difficult enough to get them into that lifestyle and all of the manipulation that is occurring to get them to that point. I mean, that would take weeks, months, maybe even longer to do that. And you know, how someone is able to successfully do that has really skewed that child's mind frame when it comes to interacting with adults and, you know, and in relationships and sexualness. And so now to take all that back away and try to really convince them that that was inappropriate, that was wrong, and try to reimagine how they think about all these issues when it comes to relationships and sexuality. And so it is very, very challenging. It's something that, you know, not only us as investigators are doing, but we team with appropriate social services groups to also help with that, because this is not just something that we're able to do on our own. We have to bring in experts and child forensic folks and social workers and CPS and, you know, many other facets to really help the kids and their families be supported in bringing these kids back out of that mindset. And so they realize that what was occurring was categorically wrong, and what they were exposed to was absolutely inappropriate and illegal.
Jim?
Yeah, I totally agree where what Brandon just said, and then you look at the other side is going after the predator. I mean, with the technology side of things, there's companies like Celebrite and these once the computer equipment, your cell phone is seized, is breaking that down and getting into the mechanics of your computer hardware, hard drive, to find these videos. Some people aren't meeting up with these girls. Some of them are just there for the photos that are sold on the dark web that goes literally around the world. So that's why the investigative side of this is so difficult.
Okay, so let's talk about, you know, this goes out to a lot of private security professionals. So my question would be, you know, it's no secret that everyone is strapped right now, right? Like resources are vapid and you have to do more with less. And you're talking about several government entities, not just the police force, CPS, like organizations that already didn't have enough people pre-pandemic, pre-vaccine issues. So now what can we do as private security companies to help?
I think really is education and prevention. And a lot of this occurs because parents are simply not aware what is occurring in their home. We have all, as parents, we have all taught our kids stranger danger. If you're at a park, if you're at the mall, we don't interact with those people. But you know what we're doing when we give a child a device and we let that child interact with unknown people on that device in our home, we are letting those strangers into our home and trying to get parents that maybe are a little bit older, don't understand the technology, to understand that, yeah, stranger danger also equals stranger danger on the devices in your home. And that it is your responsibility as a parent to understand when it's appropriate for a certain age of a child to have access to certain apps. And you know, should an 8-year-old have full access to Instagram and Snapchat, all those things, right? And we're here to say no. You know, there's a really good tool called netsmarts.org, has a really good prevention and education tools provided by National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to address the education and prevention piece of this. And so when I talk to parents every single day about this, I find myself having to parent the parent to tell them that no, your child does not have a right to the privacy of their device that you own is in your home. So you can go through the device and you can limit what they're able to look at. And you can use different applications like Bark and other tools that are attached to the kid's device to monitor this kind of stuff, or just use the internal settings within a device to limit how long they're on the device, limit the hours, and the type of apps that they're able to access. And, I always tell parents, if your child is in their bedroom, I don't care what age, particularly 16 and under or 15 and under, but, if they're 15 and under and they're accessing devices late at night, behind a closed door, in their bedrooms alone, that's a problem. And it's a recipe for disaster. And get those devices out in the open where parents can see what's occurring, particularly, for those video chats, and which is a big problem for us investigatively in terms of recovering evidence. Oftentimes is impossible to do so. And so the video chats are what concern me, what's happening under those videos. So prevention and education is key for everyone involved here, to educate parents out there, to educate kids as well as they interact with people online, so they understand that the 12-year-old you think is 12 may be, a 50-year-old.
I mean, the caveat, right, is this is great if you have parents that are concerned and listen. How do you reach the group of children that are most vulnerable, that don't have that level of support in the home, who don't have parents or have parents that don't care or don't have time to? I mean, how do you get to those kids?
Well, that's why children in foster homes, things like that, are real vulnerable
Right.
at that age, because there's no one's really paying attention to them, and they've been used to being on their own as well. But I would suggest, obviously, you've got to talk to the kid about predators and internet safety, like Brandon mentioned, and then check the kids' devices, check their search histories, and then make sure that their device is set to privacy mode, location off, those guys, so they cannot be located, at least through the device. I mean, through their own nativity, they'll tell them where they live, but at least they won't be able to locate them and follow them along as they move throughout their day once that stuff is turned off.
Brandon, do you find it, I'm sure, hard to reach that target audience?
It is very difficult. I mean, if I am a predator, if I am looking to lure a child, those are the kind of kids I'm looking for. Kids who don't come from strong parent backgrounds, kids who are out on their own late at night, kids who are at the mall for hours and hours, kids who are online unsupervised. That's who I'm going after. Kids who aren't strong in their mental state and confident about themselves. Those are kids I'm going after. And so it's hard to reach those kids. It's hard for us as adults and in law enforcement or even social welfare to really interact with them so they understand that there are people out there who want to hurt you, because those folks are trying to influence the kids to say, no, I do care about you. See, your parents don't care about you, but I do. And they gain that trust that way. So it's a very difficult population to really capture their attention. And oftentimes they fall victim to this kind of crime.
Especially the predator that comes out once they do meet and lavishes them with gifts, things like that say, see,
Adoration.
No one's done that with them before. And they say, okay, well, this guy really cares about me.
All right, our time's running out. So real quick, I just want to get in here. I want to make sure we have some information. Tip lines, anything you want to push, just lay that out for me right now. Brandon, you want to go first?
Absolutely. If you're a parent, or if you're anyone who is learns of this kind of information in terms of a child being enticed online, you want to get this reported to law enforcement, the best way to do that is to reach out to the National Center for Missing Exploited Children directly at 1-800-843-5678. That goes to NCMEC, National Missing Exploited Children, for their cyber tip line report. And you can also make that report online at cybertipline.org. And, that goes to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Ultimately, they do an analytical report, gather all the information, and then send it out to the appropriate law enforcement agency. For Washington State, that comes to me, and I look at it and determine which law enforcement agency should address that issue.
Jim, you want to give some Crime Stopper info here?
Yeah, our side is we have the anonymous tip app. For some reason you want to remain completely anonymous, we can take that tip, p3tips.com, or download a free app to your phone and report it. With that, you can submit audio, video, and photos. And once you hit submit, all we know you by is a numeric identifier, and we'll get that to Brandon for him to put out accordingly.
All right. I can't thank you both enough. I hope one day you get the available resources you need, because we're talking children and this shouldn't be happening. So I really hope, somewhere, somehow, someday you get the resources you need to effectively combat this. But in the meantime, I appreciate both of you, and thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for watching, and continue to come back to premierrisksolutions.com for more videos just like this one. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Jim.
Bet.